Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another amazing live image critique in my Facebook group, the Portrait Photographers Resource. It's been a while since we've done this, so I appreciate all of your patience. We've had some scheduling conflicts and everything, but I am super stoked to be here today because we have an awesome guest, and I'm going to give you a hint at who this guy is. So, we're both Nikon photographers. We both drive a Jeep Gladiator. We both do environmental portraiture. And we're both named Sean, which is pretty much the best name on the planet. Everyone, I want to introduce you to the amazing Sean Leblanc. Sean, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to have you. You are, for those of you who don't know Sean, he is a Nikon ambassador and he is from Canada. You're a wedding and portrait photographer, and
Yeah.
I've been really fascinated with your work over the years. And as I was mentioning to you earlier before we went live, you have been a really big inspiration to me and to my style and my portfolio. And I would love to give you the floor for a minute and give everyone the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. And I would love to just learn a little bit about your style, about your inspiration. And if you could, maybe talk a little bit about your ambassadorship with Nikon and what that looks like and how you were able to even get to that point, because that's a huge accomplishment.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. So, so yeah, I mean, I started photography, about 10 years ago, and well, I guess where it all started was I was going on a mountain biking trip to Moab, Utah,
One of my favorite
and
places was there last weekend.
oh, there you go. There you
Yep.
go. And with the beautiful landscape, I wanted to capture some really nice photos. And so that was when I bought my first DSLR. I was a Nikon D300. And it was really on that trip that I fell in love with photography, kind of playing around with settings, trying different angles. And when I got back to Calgary, I started photographing, close friends, families, started to build up a bit of a portfolio, which eventually led to some wedding work. And I was doing that while I was an engineer. So I used to work in the corporate world for a large energy company here in Calgary. And and I'd often take my camera to projects I was working on to photograph. And then one day I got an inquiry for a destination wedding in Japan, of all places, during cherry blossoms. And so, but it was one that I almost missed because of all of my corporate world commitments. So worlds essentially started to collide. And so it was really at that point that I started to seriously think about pursuing photography on a full-time basis. And so eventually I took a leap of faith and quit the corporate world. That was about 7 years ago, and built a small studio that I worked out of for a bit. I was primarily photographing weddings at the time, but I was kind of like a jack of all trades when it came to photography, families, pets, headshots, that all of those. And eventually, I sort of fell into weddings and portraits. So, when it came to weddings, I love the bold blacks and the bright whites and the very colorful photographs. But also just how you could use light to, focus or spotlight certain areas of the photo. That really dramatic sort of feel to wedding photography. Um, and so I started entering contests as well. Started to do quite well at those contests. And along the way, I was tagging Nikon pretty much every time I put a photo out there. I'm a huge fan of Nikon. I've been shooting them my whole career, shooting with a Nikon camera my whole career, and so certainly honored to be an ambassador with Nikon. So about 2 years ago, they invited, or 3 years ago now, they invited me to be an ambassador.
Yeah,
And
it's awesome.
so I've been working with them. And most about a year ago, I finished construction of the studio that you see behind me here. And so I'm primarily working out of this space now. So I'm mostly doing studio work. I still shoot one or two, maybe three weddings a year, but primarily focus on studio portraiture. It's all based on creating, a beautiful physical art piece for the families that I work with. And so it's been quite a transition. It's been, I like to say I have a heart of gratitude to be able to be a full-time photographer and work in such a creative
Mm-hmm.
space. It doesn't feel like work. It really is a very strong passion that I have. Um, Everyone, a lot of clients can see that passion come through when I'm talking about photography and photographing them as well. And so it's been just a wonderful career so far.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love to hear you talk about passion because I really feel like your clients and your prospective clients can really sense whether you're passionate about something or not. And I really do think that is what allows us to be successful in this industry, or honestly, any competitive industry, is because if you don't have that passion, you're not going to create good work and you're not going to show up for your clients. So I really love to hear you talking about that. And we don't do this for the money. I mean, yeah, you can make, you're living proof that you can make a very successful career out of taking photos, but it's not something that I feel like someone goes into because they want to make money. They're not going to say, oh, I want to be a millionaire, I should be a wedding and portrait photographer. It just doesn't
Yeah,
happen
I
that
hear
way.
you.
And I actually didn't know that you loved Moab so much. I actually try to go a few times a year. So one of these days we'll have to try to get out there together. Bring your Gladiator. We'll do some of the
Absolutely.
trails out there.
Would love it. Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
I was just there last weekend, and I'm probably gonna go back here in about a month. So let me know if you want to
Okay.
join.
Will do, bud. Will do.
Yeah. So, Sean, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be critiquing 13 images from people that have submitted photos, and
Mhm.
I'll be looking. I have three monitors here. I'm going to be looking at in front of me. I'm going to be looking at you, and I'm going to be looking at
Mhm.
all of the comments from people. So, if you are watching live, make sure you drop a comment, everyone. And I see we got a few people from Canada already watching, and a bunch of people from all over the US. So this is going to be really fun. But everyone, you know
Nice.
the drill. We're going to go through the images. We're going to give some constructive criticism, some things that we really like about the image, and some things that we feel could be improved upon. So without further ado, Sean, are you ready to rock and roll?
Ready to rock, buddy.
All right, dude. So I'm going to go ahead and pull our images up. Let's see here. There we go. All right, we're going to go ahead and do this. Let's switch my screens. And actually,
Okay.
before we do that, real quick, I wanted to mention one more thing, everyone. If you ever want to rewatch any of these interviews, these live critiques that I do, or any Facebook Live post that I make, you need to go ahead and go to my YouTube page, because as of a couple months ago, Facebook changed their policies where they actually delete all live videos a month after they're posted. So if you guys wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel, I have it pulled up right here on the screen for you all. It's at Sean Lara Photography. That would be great. So we're going to go ahead and start this. Let's see here. Oh, I need to make an adjustment real quick. For some reason, we're on the wrong screen. So let's go ahead and change that. There we go. Okay. So here's our first image of the night, everyone. Let me just pull up the info. But this first image comes from John Hawking. So I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and give my initial thoughts on this. So for starters,
Okay.
as a car enthusiast, I can say that if this were a photo of me, I would be absolutely stoked. I mean, who doesn't want just a kick-ass photo of them that's lit well next to their pride and joy, and is well lit and just makes me look like a badass? I mean, come on, this is awesome, John. Like, I don't know if this was a client or if this was a friend, but I'm sure he was absolutely stoked. So John was saying, or told us all, that he shot this at Sunset Beach, California, with a Canon R5, an 85 millimeter lens, and he used a 200-watt strobe camera left with a Magmod mag sphere. And I'm actually quite surprised you were able to achieve such soft light with just a mag sphere, because it's pretty good looking photo. So honestly, there's really not too much I could say, John, to improve this image, because I really do feel like it's strong. Maybe a couple things I would consider changing. And first is the composition a little bit. It's he's not quite in the center of the frame, and it's not really following the rule of thirds that that well. So he's kind of in this weird spot in the frame where your eyes kind of wander and it kind of floats all over the place, right? So I would recommend maybe cropping this a little bit differently. So maybe it's following that rule of thirds a little bit, and maybe his right, or like the his face is a little bit more to the right of the frame, or you kind of go the opposite direction where you go a little bit more dramatic and you crop it so maybe he's a little bit more left, or even do a vertical crop, honestly. Other thing I'm noticing, which is a little distracting, I know this is kind of hard because of just the nature of the bike, but he's got the mirror on the passenger side, of the right side of the bike, right in the middle of him, and it's kind of distracting. And if there was a way, maybe you could reposition the bike a little bit so that mirror is just not smack dab in the middle. I think that would be a little bit less distracting, and make for a little bit more of a strong image. But honestly, like I said, I'm having a hard time really kind of nitpicking this because it is so well lit and it is so good. But Sean, maybe there's something you're seeing that I'm not. What would you have to add?
Yeah, I think you got most of the main points there, Sean. One thing I did notice is it was shot at quite a shallow depth of field, so you lose a lot of that detail on the front part of the bike. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
if it was shot, more around f8 or f7.1 or something like that, you'd be able to retain some more of that detail, and it would just kind of complete the whole portrait of this gentleman with his motorbike here. But yeah, compositionally, I like how photographer got a little bit lower and shot from a lower vantage point to have the this gentleman on the motorbike sort of on sky or on a cleaner background, so that way he stands out a bit more. In terms of exposure, I think it looks fantastic. And yeah, some of those little things that you mentioned, Sean, in terms of the mirror being in front of him, so just kind of composing the bike a little bit different, so that's not as big of a distraction in front here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then maybe positioning him just between these two um, areas of the landscape that kind of come out from the beach here, so that way
Yep.
it's a little bit better centered that way. Um, but yeah, other than that, great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And then one more thing, as you were talking, I noticed is if you look at the bottom left of the frame, so basically, you look at his rear wheel and you just go straight to the left. I can kind of tell where maybe a light stand was cloned out or something. Just the patch of the asphalt is a little uneven.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
just little tiny nitpicking things that, like if you were to submit to a competition, would potentially ding it a point or two. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and just with his hands as well. It's always nice to keep fingers in the frame, or
Mm,
the full
yeah.
hand as well. So if you notice, his left arm kind of goes into the bike and almost looks like it's cut off a bit. So just having maybe both hands on the grips, that way you're kind of getting the complete picture
Uh,
of the portrait.
yeah, I didn't even think of that, but that's a very, very good point. So, um, right on. Well, thanks, John, for submitting. As always, I really enjoy seeing your work and seeing the progression of your work. So, we're going to go ahead and move on to this next photo. And this one comes from another regular contributor, Radon Burton. And Radon, as always, shows up hard with the very scenic locations. And I can see why she chose this for you to critique. Before I have you jump in, Sean, let me give a little bit of info on this. She captured this with a Canon R6 24-70. Shot it with a Geekoto 8200 camera left, on Logan's Pass, Montana. So not too far from you, actually, Sean.
Yeah.
But why don't you start and jump in? Let us know what you think.
Yeah. So this was one that really stood out when I was kind of looking at everything. I loved how It's a very dramatic scene. You've got these mountaintops that sort of create these leading lines towards the subject as well. So I liked the use there. Also how it doesn't look like there's any blown out highlights either, and you're still retaining some of the details and the shadows as well, just to kind of give it that dramatic kick. So great job that way, and also using the off camera flash here. It looks like, yeah, she's well lit. It looks like you had the flash off to the right of her, just to create a bit of and from a higher vantage point as well, just to
Mm-hmm.
create that little bit of shadow under her chin. So great job. One thing that you might want to try is just to have a bit of a lower vantage point. That way, this mountaintop ridge isn't just going through her shoulders, but more her, maybe just above her hips. And so that way, she's kind of filling this vast sky a bit more when it comes to composition. I do like how she's in the third of the frame. So you're using a great compositional technique there. But just having a bit of a lower vantage point will place her more in the sky, and again, sort of that cleaner background, and have her stand out a bit more that way. The
Yeah.
other thing, oh, sorry, Sean, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, no, no. You go for it.
The other, and just sort of some nitpicky things too, just to look at, are these, some of the rocks that are lying around. They're a little bit distracting just because they're in focus. What you could do is just use the erase tool in Photoshop just to take care of those. That way, it just kind of removes the distracting elements around this lady that you're photographing here. In terms of posing, again, she's really well lit, but when it comes to posing, like, our eyes are attracted to angles and triangles. So having her, maybe stick her elbow out a bit more, just her hand on her hip. Also, she could have both hands on her hip, maybe, again, just to kind of create a more of an angular shape with her arms here, just so they're not right beside her. You could also do something cool with her cowboy hat that she's wearing as well. So maybe rather than having her look right at the camera or be camera aware, like, have her looking off into the distance. So that way, it's more of a candid feeling that she's in this beautiful environment rather than being camera aware. Um, Also, like, the sky is just a little bit bright, like, just bringing that down just a little bit more. That way, she really stands out in the frame. Will kind of bring sort of all of those elements together that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you said. I mean, the I think the tonality and the processing is perfect. I love that we can see detail in the sky. We can see detail in the midground and the foreground. Everything is, the variance between the highlights and shadows is perfect, and it's not overly done where it looks fake. And this is just a perfect
Point.
example of how using flash can really help transform an image. There's not really much more I would say that you didn't already cover, Sean. Maybe the only thing is, I feel like the way she's standing is just a little awkward. She's kind of got this like, on, our left, her right side, she's got that hip popped, so it's almost like it's like a hump, right? And I'm thinking what would have been more flattering is if she brought, at least from the angle she's standing at, if she brought her right knee forward as opposed to her left knee. What that's going to do is it's going to turn her waist away from the camera a little bit more, which is going to give her more of that hourglass figure, and it's not going to be or it's going to be a little bit more flattering. So that's probably what I would do in regards to changing the pose, because that it just she's a little too, her hips are a little too square to the camera. So that would be
Yeah,
my only suggestion. But other than that, I mean, what an awesome location. I want to go here. This is so cool.
epic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Radon, as always, thank you so much for submitting this. And hopefully you learned a couple things from Sean. Let's go
Yeah,
ahead
great job.
and Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to this next image. This next photo comes from Lindsay Hartman, and some of her comments were after the storm during the ceremony, we got a break in the rain and were able to take some couple portraits on the dock. Shot this using a 7200 while yelling instructions from the shore. Oh man, I've been there many times where I'm like, "All right, now go ahead and put your hand on her waist." What? uh, so let me talk about first some of the stuff I like about this. So I love the composition. I love that you made the intention to not, to get that reflection and to not cut off any part of that reflection. So you see that kind of nice mirroring right there. Very genuine reaction from the bride. She's got a very big smile. Obviously, he's telling her something that she's loving, and you can and that motion is conveyed very well through this image. Her pose is very nice. She's got that knee bend. She's got the train laid out. There is obviously some thought put into this photo, and I can really appreciate the thought that was put into it, Lindsay. Couple small things that I would recommend, maybe just little nitpicking things. For starters, let's kind of go with just the overall scene. I would, and this is me pre- speaking from spending all morning preparing some photos for the Icon Awards and just being very attentive to the little tiny things. But for me, a really distracting element here is you have this like power cord on the bottom of the dock going into the water a little bit. And I find that a little, I don't know why, but I just find that very distracting. And I feel like that would be a very easy fix just using the remove tool in Photoshop or even Lightroom, just to clean up that image a little bit and to also clean up that power cord that's right below that chain that's in the middle of her dress. Just little tiny attentions to detail will make this image a little bit cleaner. The other thing too is maybe with the pose, I always try to warn and I always try to coach my couples when I have the groom, it's usually the groom, tell the bride, in this case, a secret. They kind of want to like lean in a little bit too far, and the problem with that is you lose his face, right? So here, we see his shoulders, we see his body, we see his neck. We don't see his face. We don't see his expression, right? So my recommendation is to have him just next time or in a situation like this back off a little bit so there's a little bit of space between his face and her face so we can see both of them. But those are the main things that are sticking out for me. I know if it were my photo, I would probably warm this up a little bit as well. For my taste, that's a little cool, but again, everyone has their own preferences on processing. That's just what I would do. But Sean, is there anything maybe I'm missing that you would like to touch up on?
Yeah, so great comment, Sean. I agree. With the power cable, that's something that could be easily taken out, just because it is a little bit distracting. I liked how you went for the creative reflection in the water here. Um, but I guess one thing is I don't think it contributes to this portrait. The reason why is the water's not still. I think if
Mm-hmm.
if that water was completely still and you got like almost a mirrored reflection, it would completely change this photograph. So with that said, what you could do is just crop in. If you are using that 70 to 200, go all the way to 200 mil, and just photograph this beautiful moment that they're having on the dock here together. You can incorporate sort of this greenery that you see in the background. If you shoot that wide open at 2.8, you'd have sort of that beautiful sort of blurred out background with the couple in sharp focus. And then you can incorporate some of these hanging lights that they have here as well, just to kind of bring in the warm elements of the environment there. In terms of posing, I agree with Sean, just with how his face is kind of in there a little bit too close. One thing you could do is just have them, maybe kiss over and over, going back and forth. And as they're doing that, you're sort of shooting through that moment. So that way you're able to capture just a beautiful, candid portrait of them together. Um, but in terms of exposure, I think it looks great. I don't see, maybe her dress might be blown out a little bit where it hits the dock here. You can kind of see
Yeah.
it might be a little
See what
bit
you.
overexposed. Um, but yeah, again, love the moment. Other than having his face sort of turned in there, and uh, and yeah, I think he captured everything else, Sean. So
Yeah, right on. For sure. And I do, I agree with you on the reflection. I it could go either way, right? Like it certainly would be stronger if the water wasn't moving. But for me, I like reflections regardless of whether they're tack sharp or not. So that's kind of where it
mhm.
comes to the decision of the creator. Maybe at the very least, I now that I'm kind of looking at this photo a little bit more, I think it would actually benefit from a tighter crop. So bringing in the left side of the frame, because the left side of the frame
Yeah.
doesn't really add much to the image. So basically, where that last light is on the post to the left of that, there's really not much there that I feel is adding. So if you were to just crop it in, maybe even play with like a really cool like 16:9 vertical crop, that could be kind of interesting actually. So maybe try that next time you have this photo into post production, Lindsay, and see what that looks like. So. Um, very cool. Well, thank you for submitting that. We're going to go ahead and move on to this next photo. This one comes from Richard Brodowski. Let's see what he said on this. The background was a V flat, white side, with a 600-watt strobe positioned behind the model at full power into the background. Another V flat on the white side again was positioned in front of the model to bounce the light back onto her. So I'm going to go ahead and let you start here, Sean.
Okay. Yeah, those V flats are awesome. You can be so creative with them. So glad to see. What was it, Richard?
Yeah.
Richard, using V flats. Um, I think it's a great shot of her. I do like kind of the feel of it. I find that the black and white, very timeless sort of feel to this portraiture, and just the look that she has, kind of piercing through your soul a bit with her
Mm-hmm.
eyes there. Also, how her chin is lifted a little bit. So, and this really neat hat that she's wearing too. So I think from that perspective, it looks great, Richard. So great job there. When it comes to posing, just maybe a couple of things that I would recommend. Even in post production as well, just bringing up the shadows a little bit. When I initially looked at this portrait, it was hard to make out that her legs were crossed. I actually thought she was standing and wearing a skirt, but looking closer here, her knees are crossed. So either adding in a bit more light as you're photographing, or just bringing up those shadows a little bit, just so you can kind of define her legs a little bit more in this portrait, I think would be helpful. Also, how just her left arm, she's got these incredible tattoos, but it just looks very long when it's sort of, or when it's not bent in any way. And so, just kind of bending her elbow a little bit while still showing those beautiful tattoos that
Mm-hmm.
she has, I think would really add to this. Also, it looks like just by her hair here, it might be a little bit overexposed, blown out a little bit. It could be just the flash is sort of overpowering everything a bit too much. So you just maybe watch just your settings on your camera, or just using a smaller aperture, just to cut out a bit of the light that's actually entering the camera as you photograph here. Um, the other thing, like for this portrait, what sort of sets the tone for me is just this look that she has on her face. So just doing, maybe cropping in just a little bit more to help fill that look that she has in the frame here. So that way your eye immediately goes to her face here. Um, just a few other things, like maybe her just above her thigh, a bit of her shirt was lifted there. So just kind of fixing that up in post production, just to tie it all together here a little bit more. Um, Other than that, I think it looks like it might be a little bit soft too when it comes to Focus, it's hard to tell on the screen that I'm looking on. So maybe this was shot wide open. I don't know. Maybe, well, with a wide aperture anyway. But again, just using a smaller aperture will help keep all of those details in intact, sharp focus there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would to add to what you said, yeah, I the arm was the first thing I noticed too, just how long it is. And kind of a general rule that you've all heard me say this before is if it bends, bend it, right? So elbows, wrists, fingers, knees, if it bends, make it's a little bit more natural, right? Because generally speaking, people don't just keep their arms or the legs completely extended at all times, right? So another kind of general rule as well, and again, rules are made to be broken, but another general rule is you want to try to avoid cropping below, kind of like below the knees, and we're being cropped right at her shin. So I would, and I want to see like more, right? Because the boots look kind of interesting to me, and you got these got these interesting laces, you got these buckles. So I would almost recommend you either go, if you don't crop in tighter like you recommended, Sean, shoot a little bit wider so you can see the her your entirety of her legs, so you get the full kind of length shot, and we can see more of that foot. So I think
Mhm.
just a little bit more thought putting into where the image is cropped would be would behoove the photographer. And then to point out your comment, or to address your comment about the shirt, I'm pretty sure how it's lifting right there. I'm pretty sure she's wearing a bodysuit. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think I think that's intentional. I think that's just the look she's going for.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So, but not honestly, not much more I would add to what you had to say, Sean. I agree with you. I really like her gaze and her facial expression. I think that's what makes this image.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for submitting, Richard. I'm glad you submitted this, because this is a cool photo, and I think this is one of the only black and whites we have today. So, um, I always love black and whites. So, um, good stuff. Okay, moving on. This next photo comes from Steve Eaton, another Nikon shooter. Go Team Nikon. This was captured on the new Nikon Z6 III, which I hear is a very good camera. And he used a Mag Sphere on a Geekoto GT200. So this is like right up my alley, Steve. As you know, looking from my work, and I can certainly appreciate all of the awesome layering that you have here, right? You got foreground, you got the subjects, and you got the background. And you have all these elements that kind of come together really well. Um, there's a couple small things I'd love to address with you here. So for starters, let's talk about let me point out the obvious, which is why is he wearing a baseball hat and a suit, and the bride is wearing her dress and everything. I find that a little weird. Maybe that's like his signature thing, but for that reason alone, for me, I probably would not throw it into my portfolio, just because it's a little off putting. It doesn't necessarily belong, in my opinion. So I would consider maybe if you had another photo from the scene without the hat, or include that in the portfolio, or just ask the client next time, like, hey, let's do a couple without the hat. Kind of touching up on that pose a little bit. So the first thing I'm seeing that's a little distracting to me, or a little unflattering would be a better word, is you have her looking all the way back up at the groom. And the problem with this, and this is something I try to coach my couples on all the time. The problem with that is, what happens is, I don't know if you guys can see me um, on in the screen. Actually, let me just kind of show you. You see too much neck, right? So you're seeing too much of this, and that's very unflattering, right? So instead of, next, when you're coaching your clients, instead of saying, hey, look back at the groom, say, okay, just do a small turn of your chin towards the camera. You don't need to look at him, but just a small turn, like he's trying to tell you something. You just want to hear what he's saying, right? That way you see less neck. It's a little bit less distracting, and it's just a lot more flattering. Um, A couple other things that could be improved on are the is the exposure. So highlights are, I don't, and maybe it's just my monitor. I don't know if you're seeing on your end, Sean, but the highlights are a
Mhm.
little bit blown out in the skin tones, especially. It's just a little bit overexposed. So I'd probably tone that down a bit. And then another distracting element I'm seeing is if you look at the very right of the frame, kind of where those flowers are, you'll notice that there's like a table with some boxes on there. And that needs to either be cropped out or cloned out. Um, and just to make it a little bit less distracting. And it's a beautiful scene, it's a beautiful image, but it's there's so many elements here. I'd maybe consider cropping it even tighter. But I feel like there might be a couple more things that we could add, and I'm gonna let you jump in and talk about those, Sean. Is there something else that you're seeing?
Sure. Yeah, I always like to. I learned from another Nikon photographer about tension points, and so often, like when you look around the perimeter of a photograph, do you see any tension points? And so, yeah, I mean, you highlighted it already, Sean, but sort of how there's this table here that
Mm-hmm.
is cut off, and so it's just yeah a little bit distracting from the couple here as part of it, part of the portrait here. So I think just cropping in would definitely add.
Yeah.
Also this dock that's floating in the lake here. Um, I don't think it's really adding anything to the portrait. Maybe if there was a kid jumping off of it, or a dog jumping off of it, or something like that, it would add something to it. But if it's just out there in the lake, I would just take it out. So again, removing one of those tension points. You already talked about exposure, but I do love the colorful feeling of this photograph. The greens look a little bit sort of neon green.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just the saturation might be a little bit too high in post production, so just bringing that down a little bit, um, I think would add to this. Compositionally, Sean talked about that as well, where you've got sort of those foreground elements followed by the couple in the background elements. So it's a nice use of layering there that Sean mentioned. Um, Other than that, yeah, I think a tighter crop and just sort of fixing up some of those color and exposure points that we talked about, I think would really help elevate this photograph.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, as always, thank you so much for submitting. We're gonna go
Thanks,
ahead and
Steve.
yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on. I promised Mr. LeBlanc here that I would get him out of here by 7:45, so we'll go ahead and mosey on along. This next one comes from Randall Mena, and let's see. Randall said didn't say anything about this photo, so I'm gonna let you just take it for what it is, take it at face value, Sean, and go for it. Why don't you jump in?
Okay, thanks, Randall. Um, when I first looked at this, I loved the environment that this couple is in. So you did a great job of sort of capturing the details in the ceiling as well as the floor and this incredible long veil that the bride has here. Also, where they're placed, I think for a shot like this, the shooting it in vertical, the way you have here, is the right way to do it, right? To bring in those features that I was talking about there. So great job. One thing, there's a couple things that I saw here. So if they're, I noticed like the couple was camera aware or looking right at the
Mm-hmm.
camera. So for a shot like this, like where you're bringing in these beautiful environmental elements, I always like to have them looking at one another or looking off into the distance. That way it kind of gives this feeling of they're in this beautiful environment, just enjoying the moment together on their wedding day. um, for the camera aware portraits, those work great for family portraits if you're doing those, but having like a tighter crop.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, just a suggestion there. In terms of the off-camera lighting, I wasn't sure what it looked like. It was cut off a little bit just on her wedding dress here. it might be because your shutter speed is too fast, so above the sync speed of your camera. So you're getting a bit of light being cut off when you're taking the photo here.
So Sean,
Um,
let me jump in real quick and tell you. And what one thing I'm noticing is it's actually what it is
mhm.
it's he's bringing her veil up to the camera, to the camera, so
Okay,
it's covering half of the lens. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay, yeah, I see that here now. Okay, um, so yeah, so one, and if you heard me talk about just distracting elements from previous photos we were looking at, this the lamps that are in the back here, these orange lamps. Again, I would just take those out just so the focus is on the couple as part of the portrait here. Even though it is a vertical shot, which I think is the right way to go, it looks like you use quite a wide lens, so you're getting like a bit of that bulge from a
Yeah.
wide lens or a bit of lens distortion there. You may not have been able to go back even further in this room. I don't know, but using a prime lens that maybe isn't quite as wide, a 35 that way, so you're not getting any distortion in the shot here.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I already talked a little bit about posing, but having them, do something where they're looking right at each other, just so they're not staring right at the camera here. That's what I would say, Sean.
Yeah, no, everything you said is spot on. A couple more things I will add. Just yeah, to address that angle a little bit, right? This is tough. This is one of those shots that's really tough, and you really got to select your angles very carefully. So, what I would do is move a little bit more camera right, so their heads are centered in between those two columns a little bit more effectively, because they're
Hmm.
coming a little bit too much to the right side, and especially environmental shots like this where you're dealing with straight lines, symmetry is so important, right? So change that angle a little bit, center them in those columns, center the top of the ceiling in the frame as well, so everything is just a little bit more cohesive. Um, the light that's being used on him looks a little bit hard. And I'm just seeing some specularity on his forehead, a little borderline blown out highlights. So I would consider maybe using a softbox if you didn't use one, or at least bringing that light source in a little bit closer. And I'm noticing that too. If you're looking at the shadow of her from her dress, the shadow lines are a little harsh. So that suggests to me that a small light source was used. And then other than that, the I'm not really sure what's going on with the light behind them. It looks like, do you remember, Sean?
Right
Do you
here.
remember those Magmod mag discs where you could put the cool patterns on front of your flash? I feel like that's, or the mag
Yeah.
beam, right? I feel like that's what he used here maybe. And for me, it's just not really working because my eye keeps kind of going there, and it takes my attention off the couple, and it takes my attention off the rest of the scenery, which is gorgeous. So I probably would just forego using that. And then if I wanted to get really picky, I would also remove in post production those two orange lights in the hallway to the camera right, because again, going with that symmetry thing, it doesn't really match the other side of the frame. So just a couple things that I noticed as well, but overall, really cool photo, Randall. Really cool location, and thank you for sharing. So
Nice work.
yeah. All right, here we go. Next photo. This comes from Brian Green. And Brian, let's see, he did not share any info for this, so I will go ahead and take it at face value. And I will start. Um, so for starters, let's see. This is kind of like, to me, I don't know if I'd even call this a portrait. It's almost like street photography, right? Where you just happen to capture a moment that was happening. And I don't know if that was the intention or whatnot, but it's definitely interesting for sure. So the I let me just jump start by saying that I kind of like what he's wearing, because it shows like he has his own personal sense of style, and it contrasts very well against this like kind of just drab cityscape that's, maybe a little urban. So to me, that's something I'm actually really enjoying, and I think it adds some fun to an overall maybe kind of slightly depressing scene. So some things that could be improved on is that it is first of all the composition, right? So there's a lot going on, and I feel like this is an image that would benefit better if it was cropped tighter, because your eye just tends to wander all over the place. Kind of going back to that very first photo, it's not quite following the rule of thirds, right? Like he's not quite center, but he's not quite off to the right side or the left side of the frame, and it's just really hard to read. Because it's a really busy scene, this would benefit from maybe choosing a different focal length as well. So maybe a 70-200 where you can compress that background, or you can blur that background a little bit more. One thing that I'm finding very, very distracting is it looks like that parking garage and that top of that parking garage coming right out of his head. So his head kind of gets lost in that busyness. So so in the future, if you're going to do a wide photo like this, you have all this negative space in the sky and this blue sky. Shoot from a very low angle so you can get his body in that negative space, so you can frame him around all of that busyness of the urban setting. Do you agree with that, Sean? Do you have anything to add?
100%. I Yeah, I mean, I thought, it was well exposed. The off camera lighting that I'm sorry, was it Richard, or my
Oh, this
apologies,
is Brian.
Brian? Sorry, Brian. That Brian was using here. That it does look like it was unmodified off camera light. If you notice on his cheek there, it looks like quite harsh light hitting him
Yeah.
here. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
using a softbox or just some way to kind of soften the light here from your off camera flash. Sean mentioned a lot of the sort of busy features about this photograph already. I think rather than portrait for this, or vertical for this shot, shooting landscape would really benefit it.
Mm-hmm.
Then that way you can bring in some of the detail of the movie theater that he's standing in front here, just kind of set the scene of the environment to where he is. And then that would take care of some of this vast open sky that you have here, as well as the brickwork down below. So kind of not as much negative space, essentially.
Yeah.
I talked about tension points as well. The other thing is it looks like some of the lines here are a little bit tilted. So, one thing with architectural photography is just making sure those lines go straight up and down. So in Lightroom, you can use under I believe it's the crop tool, you can sort of adjust how the lines are featured in the architecture there. So just straightening those, I think, would definitely add to it. In terms of the color, I like how he's wearing a pink shirt, and sort of you have this vast blue sky, so it adds a bit of pop there. You could bring out some of the details in the shadows a little bit in post production here,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of give it more of a dramatic, high def feel here.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, nothing else I'd have to add after hearing your comments, but thank you, Brian, for submitting that, and just keep
Thanks,
shooting, man.
Brian.
Keep practicing, keep trying different angles, and see what works. So, okay, moving on. This next photo comes from a Canadian, eh? This is
Oh,
this is from DJ Clark, and DJ said that he was not the official photographer at this wedding. It was at his friend's wedding, so he was outside with the wedding party and saw the groom stressing over the vows. It was just point and shoot, and he thought that the desaturated background, the selective color, would improve the photo. What are your thoughts on that, Sean? Do you think that the selective color improves the photo, or what? I guess that's just what's your opinion?
Well, yeah, thanks for submitting, DJ. A couple of things I liked about this shot was the composition. I think how you cropped it here was great. And also creating a bit of those layers. So you're setting some of the scene with the groom in the foreground and sort of his family, or in the background there. So it's kind of setting that scene. Um, I there's a few things that you hear me talking about tension points and sort of distracting elements a lot. Just taking out this bar that's in the background here. Um, in terms of the color, personally, I don't think it adds to it. It kind of feels like it dates the photograph a little bit. I don't know what decade this was this sort of theme was popular, but
Early
it's
2000s. Yeah.
was it early 2000s? Okay,
Basically, right when digital cameras became a thing, like very
okay.
prevalent in the market, I should say.
One thing I would recommend rather than doing a black and white background is maybe just bringing down the exposure. So that way,
Hmm.
all the focus goes to the groom in the foreground. Because really, I mean, he's nervous. You're sort of capturing that energy about him in this photograph here. And then by bringing the exposure down, you're sort of isolating him in the photograph a little bit more. Um, a few things as well. It looks like the background might be blown out there. If you notice by the this woman's head here, it looks like it's a little bit just overexposed there. Probably because you were trying to get a proper exposure of the groom there. So just watching for exposed
Hmm.
highlights is another thing. But again, I would recommend sort of a lower exposure in the background rather than this sort of color shift that you have here.
Yeah, I mean, DJ, you captured a really good moment. I mean, this is actually something that generally I feel like as wedding photographers, at least a primary photographer wouldn't normally capture because usually we're kind of up at the front, capturing them as they come in for the processional. So this is one of those moments that captures that energy, as you stated, Sean, right before that moment where he walks down. So the fact that you were there and you captured this is really solid work. Um, but yeah, not really much more I could add. The selective color does date the photo quite a bit. Like 2005, 2006, it was pretty popular um, to do this because digital cameras were new and it was cool to see the things you could do with Photoshop and everything. But um, yeah, in this day and age, it really does date a photo, and I would go either full color or black and white. Personally, I feel like black and white all the way would translate very well for this image. So.
Mhm.
Um, but DJ, thanks for submitting this, man. I always love seeing your work, and it's cool to see your photo get critiqued by a fellow Canadian. So, um, yeah, let's see here. We'll go ahead and move on. We only got a few left. Kind of a shorter one tonight, which is nice. Okay, so this one comes from Melissa Papentik, and Melissa, she says that she had a flash behind the couple with a Magmod gel, and a second flash was held by her assistant with a Magmod grid. I do wish I put the grid on the backlight so it didn't spill as much, but I took this shot fast for my couple. Um, so very very cool moment that you captured, and what I love about this photo is this is a photo that the bride and groom are gonna love because there's a story here, right? There's if you look at the fire, their pallets being burnt, right? And it's not something you typically would see at a wedding. So as the viewer, as someone that's taking this photo for face value, it intrigues me and it makes me ask questions because it's something that you don't normally see. So I can really appreciate that. And I love that you intentionally put the blue gel because the orange and the blue work so well together.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about color theory, um, it's orange and blue complement each other very well. And also he's got the orange tie, so it's just kind of poetry, right? To get a little technical on everyone now, there's a couple things I would personally recommend you change. So for starters, the light's kind of flat, and I know on them, and I know that's kind of the Hollywood look right now. It's very in, so take it or leave it. However, I feel like is if you're gonna shoot, you're gonna be very intentional with using off-camera flash and being creative with light. Maybe be a little bit more intentional with the direction of your key light, right? So it looks like the flash is coming from camera left. I would maybe suggest bringing it a little bit higher or a little bit even more off axis, so there's a little bit more direction, and that you get a little bit more of that highlight to shadow variation to match the contrasty background. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the main things I'd recommend. The pose is fun. Like I already touched on the color. I love the color. Um, Other than that, just tell your clients to stop wearing smartwatches to and that's all weddings, and that's all I have to say. What do you have to add to this, Sean? And I don't know if you knew this, but I'm a big watch enthusiast, so I'm always like looking at like people's wrists and see what they're wearing, and if it's a smartwatch, I'm like, nope, take that shit off.
um, Yeah, I love the use of color in this photograph that you mentioned, Sean. Sort of that blue, warm uh, contrast there. They're having a great moment here. One thing I would suggest is just kind of cropping in a little bit more. Um, the way his vest is just a little bit higher than his white shirt, it's just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit distracting. And then just how his belt is kind of cut off. Again, tension point on that bottom part of the photograph. So I think just cropping in a little bit more would really help this photograph. Also, just having them, maybe on the right third, and then you've got that palette fire in the background, so it kind of completes the composition a little bit better there. And then the I noticed just maybe some of the skin cleanup. Like he's got a few
Mm-hmm.
uh, heaters here on his face. Just kind of taking those out just so it's nice skin here as well. Um, then it looks like the wedding dress is a little bit blown out on her right side here. You can kind of see it has that really bright white kind of look to it. It may just be like your flash was just a little bit too high. If it is blowing out, it's kind of you can't really bring it back in post production. But next time you kind of try this shot, just kind of have the lights at a little bit lower power. But yeah, I love how the smoke is coming out, and you're sort of backlighting that smoke. And yeah, overall, great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Yeah, very cool photo, and I definitely want to learn more about this story and why they're burning pallets at their wedding. So I love that aspect about it. Okay, let's see here. This next photo comes from Adrian Como, another Canadian. And
Oh, okay.
let's see, this was captured using one 200-watt strobe behind the couple using a Magmod Magsphere XL. She used so she did a little bit of shutter drag here to and then zoomed in at the same time, so she kind of achieved that effect, which was actually a really cool idea. I've done this quite a bit during like dancing at receptions, but I've never really thought to do it during like a posed portrait. So,
Mhm.
what a cool idea! But I think it's your turn to start,
My
right?
turn. Okay.
I think.
Yeah, I love the creativity. That's something I'm really passionate about when it comes to photography is just how creative you can be with it, and so love that you're sort of pushing those technical ideas as well as um, compositional ideas and things like that. So great job, Adrian. Um, in terms of, I would say like overall the photograph looks quite dark. It's kind of hard, and that may be the look you were going for. Kind of sort of that moody, darker photograph. But one thing I would say is maybe bumping up the flash power a little bit. That way, you get a bit more brim light around the couple, and they sort of become more of the focus of the portrait. But again, I'm not sure if you were going for overall dark look here or what. Um, in terms of the pose, what you could try, because it looks like they're a little bit far away. What I always like to do is just kind of have them go back and forth. So if they're
Mm,
kind of kissing one another and you're sort of shooting and trying to get that moment where they're, rather than this far apart, they're just like really close, but they're
mm,
still separated. So you can still make out their nose and their chin and everything. It's like that almost kiss you may have heard of before. So it just kind of creates that more emotional feeling as part of the portrait there. Um, it does look a little bit oversaturated as well. Like I noticed the blues here are quite stark blue. The greens and some of the oranges here. Again, that might be the look you were going for. It just felt a little bit oversaturated here from what I saw. Um, Also, it looks like there's some specks in the air. Could just be
maybe
dust
rain?
or something like that. It almost looks like there's two eyes, sort of right here in the center of the right under their chins. But anyways, I'd recommend taking those out in post production just to kind
Mm.
of clean it up a little bit more. But other than that, great job on pushing creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And to touch up on the pose a little bit, it does feel like they're just a little static, right? Like there's not like they're just kind of standing there. They're not actually really embracing. And even with silhouettes, right? Like you can still convey emotion, right? When you just see a silhouette from someone. So I would even maybe have them like smiling a little bit, kind of talking to each other, doing something to just to have some better body language. And, one thing you can actually do just right, obviously you can't go back and shoot it, right? But one thing you can do in post production is I actually feel like this image would work really well if you cropped it tighter and you just completely cropped it in from like their waist up, because the bottom of the frame, it's not really adding that much to the photo in my opinion, and when you're looking at their legs, it just adds to that, like that kind of that stuffiness, or just um that static pose. So by cropping that in above their waist, I feel like it would be so much of a stronger image. And in fact, I kind of want to zoom in on my end a little bit. Yeah, so like I'm kind of cropping in a little bit for those who are watching the live video, and something like this crop, it cuts out all the distracting elements in the frame, and it's focusing just on those blue lines. So if you're looking at the live feed right now, I feel like that is a significantly stronger image than the original. What do you guys think that are watching at home? Would you agree that this crop might be a little bit better? Um, Either way, it's just something to think about and get the wheels turning a little bit. But um, yeah, this is actually inspiring me to kind of try something similar to this. So I think I'm gonna try this on my next wedding or engagement session. So um, really cool idea, Adrian. Thank you so much for sharing. Cool. She loves the crop. So all right, I sometimes know what I'm talking about. Woo. um,
Oh,
but hey, thank you for submitting, Sean. Really good comments. Let's go ahead and move on. We got 3 images left. So this next photo comes from actually a previous critiquer that we've had on here. So we got to make sure we're really tough on him. Okay, Sean. This
okay.
guy, this photo comes from Kevin Holding. You actually might know Kevin. I'm not sure.
The name
But
sounds familiar. Yeah.
yeah, a fellow MagMod guy. This was a mag grid. This was captured using a mag grid held by an assistant, booming over the couple camera left. The coordinators held a foot or so in front of my camera. Uh, I'm assuming he meant to say coordinators held a sparkler about a foot or so in front of my camera, just outside the frame. So yeah, what a cool grand exit. And speaking from experience, these are really these are really hard to photograph. So I can certainly appreciate the level of attention to detail here. So just a couple small things maybe that I would recommend that we do to improve this image. So for starters, I know when you're kind of in the moment, Kevin, it's really hard to account for all the variables. Um, Take it or leave it. I'm not sure how you feel about this, everyone. This is maybe just my opinion, but that backlight, just a little distracting. My eye tends to go straight to that backlight first, and maybe if this was shot like just like the photographer was just a tad lower, you might be able to kind of hide that backlight behind the crowd of people. Um, what I would also maybe think about doing, Kevin, is straightening that horizon line because you kind of got this Dutch angle going on. And again, it doesn't make or break the image, but I'm just being hard on you because you're such a talented photographer and you're shooting at such a high level that I'm kind of trying to nitpick things that maybe some judges would point out during a competition. Um, but really, I mean, the pose is great. They're in the moment. I love all the guests. Maybe maybe if you're kind of going back, if you want to go back and edit this photo, another thing I would maybe do is kind of brush some of the guests' feet and legs to bring down that exposure a little bit, kind of down on the ground. So again, it brings a little bit more attention back into the couple as opposed to just looking at the distracting elements. Like I'm seeing one of the guests, for example, has an ankle cast or ankle brace on, which is kind of funny to see. But really, those are just some small nitpicking things. I would say I love the framing of with the sparklers around the camera. I love the lighting. It's all quite excellent. Um, Mr. LeBlanc, what would you have to add?
Yeah, you're a fantastic technical photographer. Yeah, like Sean was saying, this is a hard shot to capture, and you did a great job here. I'm not seeing, really anything that's too overexposed. Sean mentioned the background light, maybe just bringing that down a little bit. I would crop in a little bit. I always find like cropping in just seems to improve photographs, just because like the bottom right here you can see like her foot's cut off a little bit. Similarly on the bottom left there's a foot that's cut off as well, so just kind of bringing that in just so you kind of have cleaner edges around the photograph. um, Also, on some of the brickwork here there is light spill coming from somewhere, so just taking that right out just to kind of take away those distracting elements a
Mm.
little bit more. um, but I mean, other than that, awesome moment, really well executed. uh, Great job, Kevin.
Yeah, yeah, really, really, really tough shot to do, um, technically. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we got just two more for the evening. So this next photo, it's our first anonymous photo of the uh, evening. Um, Not much information. The only thing is that this was captured obviously in the fall using a Magmod Magsphere, a Geekoto GT200 light, shot close to high noon. Um, why don't
Wow.
you start?
Okay. High noon, tough time to shoot, but you definitely made the most of it. Um, when it comes to exposure and shooting at high noon, I think you did a fantastic job. Um, Looks like you used like a smaller aperture just to get the some of the sun streaks there. Um, when I first saw this, I thought it was a landscape photo, and then you kind of look around and you see the couple as part of the landscape. So I really like that as well. That's one of my favorite things to do when it comes to environmental portraits. You think you're looking at a landscape, but then you see the couple um, in the photograph. So, one thing I would do, I would crop in a little bit more. There's this tree just on the right side of the frame that's kind of coming out of nowhere into the frame. So, either taking that out in post production or just having a tighter crop, I think would definitely help here. Also, just to watch, the trees coming out of their head. If maybe if he had the opportunity just to take two more steps to the right, they would kind of
Mm,
fall into this opening that you see in the trees, just to the left of where they're standing here. If you're facing the photograph on your computer, that little opening would almost frame them as well, so you'd have a bit of creative
mm.
framing around them there. Um, in terms of the pose, it's nice. It looks like their eyes are closed. So again, just having them, maybe do something where they're interacting with one another, or kissing each other, just to kind of create a bit more feeling when it comes to the emotion as part of the photograph. But I do love the color that you've captured here with the trees and this beautiful blue sky. Um, so other than that, I think you did a great job.
Yeah, I'd have to agree for sure. Um, yeah, I the first thing I would think of when I saw this photo is it looks like a landscape, and you're like, oh, it's a really pretty landscape photo, and then you kind of move around, and you're like, oh, wait, there's people here. It's a portrait. It's environmental portrait, and I also kind of like one little attention to detail. Maybe you may or may not have noticed is the light behind them, like on the ground. They're kind of centered right in that light, but I would agree that maybe if which I like, but maybe if we moved camera right a little bit, framed them in between those trees, that would be a little bit more effective. Um, yeah, not really much more I'd have to add.
Hmm.
Really cool photo. I wish I took it. Um,
Yeah, really cool shot.
yeah. All right. Cool. We'll move on to the next photo. Thank you, anonymous photographer. Our last photo of the evening. This comes from Lock Lee, and no information attached to this image, so I will take it at face value. But Locke is a regular contributor. He's from Seattle, really excellent photographer. Um, so let me start by saying I love the framing. Right, like you did a great job framing them and placing them right in between this arch. You got them centered in the image, and it just compositionally it's in my opinion fairly successful. Um, where I think it falls just a little short for me is the backlight is a little too bright. It's a little too much to the fact where we're starting to see overexposed highlights. We're seeing the hair, we're losing detail in her hair. We're seeing a strong highlight under her chin, which so you lose definition in her chin. That light spill on the ground is a little uneven. So little tiny attentions to detail like that can really make or break a photograph. Um, I'm also saying that maybe like it's kind of hard to tell, but maybe it was shot slight like the horizon's maybe a little uneven. It's kind of hard to I think I don't know because if you're looking at the top of the arch, it looks like it's not perfectly centered in the frame and it's a little bit too far to the left. So maybe just cropping it tighter or having the photographer take a step to the right would help. It's hard to say, but um, that's really the main thing that I would strongly recommend for next time is just bringing down those highlights, bringing down that flash power on that light will make it a little bit more well balanced of an image. Anything to
Hmm.
add to that?
Yeah, I love the creativity, the composition that you have there, using this arch as a way to frame them. Um, as I was saying before, I would crop in. Again, I find that an image becomes stronger if you crop in a little bit closer. Um, wasn't there an Ansel Adams quote or something about
About
if the
cropping?
photograph's not good enough, you're not close enough, or someone said that.
Um, I don't
I'll
know.
have to
I have
Google
to
it.
go. Yeah, I'm googling that. No, he
But
did say photograph is never finished until I burn the corners. So, but that's not
oh, okay.
really. Yeah.
But yeah, I would just crop in a little bit more, just because this, it's the concrete, or the floor they're standing on, isn't adding much. So just bringing
Yeah.
that up a little bit, I think, would make it stronger. Sean, you already talked about the overexposure. and some of her dress is was getting hit with light here as well. So just burning that down a little bit just to create more of uh, a darker tone on her dress, I think would help. Really nice moments they have here. Um, maybe even getting like a little bit closer during that
Hmm.
moment, I think would help it. But other than that, I love how you brought up the shadows here, so you can see a lot of the details in the hedge.
Yeah.
Uh, the yellow cast tone on the trees and behind. I'm not sure if that was from post production. Like you can see in the grass behind them here, it looks a little bit mustardy. So it might just need a bit of a color balance there.
Might
But
be
other than that,
another
it's a
flash.
great creative shot.
Yeah. I mean, this is like before, like this was like this used to be my bread and butter, these kind of photos, right? Like when I was really starting to experiment with lighting and off-camera lighting, I loved these backlight shots. And
Mhm.
I still do a lot of these to this day, because they're, they're quick to set up, and it makes you seem like such a hero to the bride and groom or to your couple by just placing a light behind them. So I love to see stuff like this, and I love to incorporate stuff like this. But yeah, thanks for the input, Sean. I couldn't agree more with everything you said, and that's actually going to put us to the end of our image critiques. That was the last photo. So
There
what'd you
we
think for
go.
your first time around doing this?
A lot of fun. Yeah. No, it was great. I find I learn a lot from doing these, image critiques as well. It just makes you think a little bit because I think sometimes you can kind of get trapped into looking at your own work for hours on end, right? So it's great to kind of see other photographs and kind of pick them apart a little bit. And so again, I definitely got a lot out of this as well. So it was a lot of fun, and yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, it was great having you, and like I said, I've been a big fan of your work for many years. I think I first found out about you through Magmod, so it was
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it
Well,
was
thank
cool
you,
to
Sean. Yeah.
yeah, of course. So it was really cool to have you on here. And for those who maybe tuned in a little bit late, do you have, if people want to learn more from you, where can they do that? Where do you have any workshops coming up or speaking engagements? Where can people learn from you?
Sure. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. So just at Sean LeBlanc. I'm often posting new work or some behind the scenes work on there. So you're welcome to check out my portfolio there. Also, my website, which is just seanleblancphotography.com. I do offer one-on-one mentoring as well. I'm a big proponent of learning about the business of photography. I
Mm,
think a lot of time is spent more on the creative side, which is certainly where my passion is. But it's important to understand the business side as well, and so I do that with my mentoring as well. Um, and in terms of workshops, I'm based in Calgary, so I mostly do workshops here in the city. I
okay.
have a photo walk for Nikon I'll be doing here coming up in October,
Oh, cool.
um, and then a few other things for Profoto coming up. But again, they're mostly based in Canada. I'll probably be at WPPI in March. Um, and other than that, something else coming up potentially in Italy. So we'll see what
Ooh.
happens there.
All right. Let me know if you need an assistant. I'll help.
Yeah. There you
Uh,
go.
well, hey, once again, Sean, thank you so much. Let's go to Moab at some point and
Would
do
love
some
to,
off
man.
roading there. I don't know if you've done any off roading there, but I'll show you the ropes if you haven't. Especially with us both driving gladiators, we can pick all the same lines and all of that.
There
um,
you go.
yeah. Well, hey, for everyone tuning in, thank you as always for your submissions and for tuning in, sticking around. And you know the drill. As always, stay classy, stay sassy, and be dope nasty. Take it easy, everyone. Good night.
Right.